Hanoi Hilton prison from Vietnam War era, so we'll let you know what we think and we'll go from there. We had to pay $100,000 total to get in. I don't know how much that is. I'm so confused right now. I think it's like $8.
Hello.
Hello. Is the camera okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Hoi Loi was actually, this is the prison. It was used as French revolutionaries, or French colonists would get the Vietnamese who were actually at that point in time rebelling against colonialism of the French. And so that's where this started, and there was a lot of torture by the French to get the people that stopped the revolution, but the revolution fighters were strong, according to, it's very interesting to listen to on the Vietnamese side, and then you'll have the French, so it's very interesting to listen to the two different, but said that the French tortured them, and that's where they learned the torture that they're going to use in this prison for years. So that was until 1953, and then in 1955 to 1973 it was used as, it became known as the Hanoi Hilton or Heartbreak Hotel. And that's what this was. They captured American bombers who were doing bombing raids up here. John McCain was held here, and that's what this has got significance to the U.S. So we're going to go in here and see different artifacts from the time. So this is where a village lived here in this area, and they made terracotta bowls, and that's what we're seeing over here. And it's meant furnace, so that's what this was known as. And the French built the prison here because it's in the central area.
This is for some of the tiles that they built the prison with. It's the top of a lightning rod and the chimney cap. Here's some of the bricks. What sizes? Like the lock. Some of the stoves.
So we're in cell house D, and this originally was built to hold 40 prisoners, but at the height of the French Revolution, or when the Vietnamese were revolting, there was up to 100 people in here at a time. And then they locked these windows and wouldn't open them after an escape in the 30s, and it took them 8 years to reopen it back up. And that's where a lot of these North Vietnam's leaders were here together, and that's where they came up with their policies and processes to hold prisoners of war, i.e. American soldiers and other, not soldiers necessarily, but fighter pilots. So what we saw over there is just a section of it. The D is one section, is all the left remaining. So what you saw over here, some of this still was imported from France because the quality was supposed to be there. And then other parts of it was built hill locals. So this all came from France.
So it just shows you those were the dishes that they would use. And this is a large rice basin. That's what they would store the rice in. So they would pour the prisoner stuff in out of that bowl. They did not eat well. Poor food. There was a time when 40 prisoners died in a month because of that. Use those for drinking water. There's some more bowls and plates. Imagine trying to use that as a spoon. That's what they used for their blankets and their prisoner clothes.
Were assigned to that single wood trough that you saw over there, and they had that one bucket, and they had 10 minutes to eat. And they said it was full of maggots and morning glory with the root still attached. You struggled with just eating the vegetable a little bit, but yeah. So that's what they served the meals in, and so the prisoners then would make bowls out of the coconut shells, and that's what those bowls were, so they could scoop it out instead of just using their hands. And talked about multiple executions that took place, as well as prison uprisings. So at any given time, there was up to 100 people here housed in one area, and they would be up and down. And this is during the French Revolution or French occupation. Back here, you can see the restrooms, the trains. So the prisoners, though, since they were here, they would write and they would learn and then develop content. But a lot of them were sick for different reasons, bad living conditions.
One thing that I read was that they would, when the guards would want to punish them, that they would not clean out the toilets. They'd leave them.
Correct.
And while doing that, they used that to their advantage and hid documents in there.
Correct. And studied and learned from it. And so part of it, they would rebel so they could write more and get more content out to people.
The bricks and hide things inside the bricks and put them back as well.
So when Michelle shows you in that room, you can see that the floor is pitched backwards, and that the individual couldn't find a comfortable laying position. If he laid down, then all the blood would go to his head. If he sat up, that's all he had to do. And then there was only 2 small holes, and the longest they could leave him in there for 30 days at a time. But one of the guys was sharing after about 15 days, he was so numb, he couldn't feel any pain or hurt. He just hurt everything. and they normally went blind from being in there. So here it is in a little bit more detail. So it's a cold floor. They gave them rice and salt is all they got to eat. And it's painted black to try and keep it dark, and then you can see the two little holes that they had up top. So this would be isolation, or solitary confinement. Oops, sorry. Sorry. So this is an almond tree, and actually they used it. Almonds apparently had healing, natural. So they used the wood to make chopsticks and pens, and then they used the almonds. They would preserve them to give to the prisoners for medicine. They could use the leaves to try and revive people because they're so bitter. So they said it was a saving grace for the prisoners, having this almond tree in here.
This is an underground sewer where 16 prisoners attempted to escape through it. 5 of them succeeded. Can you imagine trying to climb through that? In the night of 11th to the 16th of March in 1945, over 100 of the political prisoners escaped through this underground sewer. Again, not very big.
We're not even quite through, and we hit a gift shop. So there's a gift shop on our way through, which is always kind of. It's kind of interesting. We turned to the final victory, and I was just looking to see what it was about. And where did I read it? But anyways, it talks about how the U.S. was trying to become a world dominance and control everybody, and this is why the U.S. was here in the first place and fighting against the Vietnamese. Interesting. That's what it looks like as they're trying to break through and cut the bars.
Ê, ra xịt cái bàn này được không? Nó cứ nhòe ra nhỉ? Bấm chuột của nó nhòe. Ui, được.
These last two talk about two women who were imprisoned and how they fought against the French as well. Interesting stories, true stories about people's lives and what they stood for.
So this whole section was for housing the females. There was one time that there was over 300 females in here. Cannot imagine.
is a women's prison. They keep 30 women up here. And that's all they had for a toilet. And they put the inmates up here that were sicker, further away from. If the children didn't have a grandparents, they were stuck. Or excuse me, didn't have grandma and grandpas around, then they were have the kids in here, and the kids were only allowed to eat what their mothers eat. So if the mothers got one rice, they had to share that with their child.
Excuse me. So all these things were used to torture the females. This was embroidered by one of the inmates sent to her child.
This is death row, basically, and how they knew they could get out and walk around us all for 2 days, and then or 2 hours a day, and then they were put back in death row. If you come look up here, you can see how the bar latches through and then just has a quick drop through, so it held there, and then
Show the school kids how to make straw hats to protect their heads from shrapnel from bombs. That's what the bomb shelter would look like. 400,000 individual and 90,000 mass bomb shelters in Hanoi.
it's about tribute to the revolutionary fighters in Vietnam and how they stood up against the French, because that's who was imprisoned here the longest. And so this is a tribute to the Vietnamese who fought against the oppression of the French and the colonization. I find it rather interesting listening to the Vietnamese tour guide and how the Americans were treated so well, and it was a great place, and they were, anyways, it's just very interesting to hear different sides. Now we're going to go into the part of the exhibit that's kind of dedicated to the Hanoi Hilton and the American soldiers and whatnot. It's interesting, we hear about the atrocities and stuff, but even, I guess, Lieutenant Peterson, who was caught, but anyways, he said that the local militia actually kept the local people from killing him because they're so angry because he was dropping bombs and killing their families. And rightfully so. I mean, we were committing some serious atrocities. It's just very interesting to hear, you have to get outside of your knowledge base to learn more. And by coming to different places like this, it gives you that opportunity. All right, thanks for joining us on this adventure. Michelle, what'd you learn inside the Hanoi prison?
They had quite a few prisoners, and it was super sad to see what they had to go through. The men and the women having to keep their children with them if there's nowhere else for them to go, and rationing the food even further. Very poor conditions. It was super sad.
Yeah, it really helped me understand the struggle the Vietnamese people had with French colonization and trying to become their own government. They saw this poor example, of being colonized, and they're like, we want to be on our own and independence. And it's really interesting to think that, you know, that was still going on after my dad was born, and you know, and then only a few years later, then the U.S. is nervous that they're going to all become China, you know, and communist, and big communist scare, and then the U.S. war, and just kind of, you know, the perceptions on both sides of it was very enlightening to me, and I really enjoyed it. We spent about 2 hours there. Mm-hmm. You could spend a little bit less. You know, that was probably the first audio tour that I thought was very necessary for me, because it kind of painted the picture. If you've gone through Alcatraz and if you like that kind of a storytelling, it's very good. It is very leaning one-sided, you know, during the U.S. portion of it, but I get it. I would too, right? So,
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I would, you know, the audio tour was $4 extra. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, about $4. So I'd do it, you know, for that. To get in was like $4. So, you know, it was a very worthwhile experience. Really enjoyed ourselves. So, if you have a chance, if you find yourself in Hanoi, to me, it's a must-see. If you have any desire to learn about history, and not just U.S. history, but Indochina history, must-see. But remember,
You got this.